people basically didn't believe. Indeed, it was a crazy idea that the price can go from like $4,000 to $6,000 in a month. But now we made like a half of way to this $6,000, and indeed we can continue this way up to 6,000 and make something like this, which eventually may play out to something like this. So, and indeed it's pretty crazy idea, but with such pumps of Bitcoin which we observed, everything is possible really. So what I'm looking at today is there are some interesting observations with indicators which we usually looked at, and first I will start with RSI and stochastic oscillator. So for the RSI, if you remember, we were very, very high before, and on the daily time frame when the price was something like 5,450. But with a relatively small correction which we had, the RSI indicator actually cooled down quite a lot, and now we have the room to grow to a new high with the price going above the previous high. So this looks like a bullish but not oversold right now. And stochastic actually is pretty similar, so it was rather high at that point, and then now we corrected and it's ready to go to the same level or even higher level once again. It actually wasn't that high because like 100 is here and we were not even at 95. On the weekly time frame though, situation is pretty much neutral, so RSI did correct very little, but it's still positive. We're still above like this trend line which we drew before, and we can go much higher. For the stochastic oscillator, we seem to have a chance to have an intersection and going to the downtrend, but still it actually can go to the higher level, and even if this correction will happen, then we need like 1 or 2 weeks to really see that. But what is even more interesting is MACD and stochastic RSI. So MACD is still pretty bullish on the weekly time frame. You see the histogram is still positive. We are not even showing any signs of reversal. The stochastic RSI though was very high. It was at the top for a while, and now it started to show a little signs of the correcting lower, but technically it can stay at this high level a little more. Now it has a little additional room to grow to return to this 100 level and then stay there for a while, but you see it cannot really stay there for that long. If it stays for like 1 or more weeks, then it would have to go lower and this drop will be nasty like that. So stochastic RSI also indicates that we probably may have additional leg up in the price and then eventually we'll have a correction. Now if we will move to daily time frame, things are even more interesting. You remember stochastic RSI was very high, so now stochastic RSI here on the daily time frame is actually oversold. And although it's not that critically oversold, it's not close to zero. It actually didn't touch even like 5 or something, but it's absolutely ready to go up. Of course, it can go a little bit more, it have a little bit more deep, so maybe a couple of days or 3 days, and then eventually flip to the bullish side and the price will go higher. Pretty much the same thing with MACD on the daily time frame. Although it looks like we are about to turn to be bearish, yet the intersection which we have here is far from like the general trend line of the tops which we had here. So we have still room to go there. After we may have a little bit more cooling process at this point, like few days maybe. And if you'll go to even shorter time frames like 4-hour chart, you see recently we were noticing this bearish divergence here, so the price went up, but MACD on 4 hours time frame went down, and indeed we had a correction afterwards, so this bearish divergence played out perfectly, and now MACD is pretty low, so we can actually have additional rise within like this 4-hour time frame for a while. And again, stochastic RSI comparing to 1-day time frame where it is very low, now it is actually high, so we can see low on stochastic RSI here, and then it would move stochastic RSI on daily time frame a little bit lower, and from that point we can start to grow again. Also, we shall not forget about the moving averages and the fact that we have 50 days moving averages about going here and 200 days moving averages going somewhere around here. So within a few days we may have this golden cross, and then also 100 days moving average is going like that, so we have even more of a possible rise, and all of them will serve as support lines for future correction of the price, whatever it will go from that point, like 6,000 or something, and then if it will correct, then it will have a decent support from those moving averages. But in addition to that, we may look at the Bollinger Bands on the daily time frame. It's actually quite reasonable right now, so we return to Bollinger Bands again, and we're pretty much close to the baseline, so we may continue to stay around here, and then the baseline will reach the price, and then the price can surge from this baseline to the upper band of Bollinger Bands. And actually, if you return to the weekly time frame and look at the Bollinger Bands, then you would see that we are still above the upper band. And although this candle looks like a doji, but I would like you to pay attention at this formation. So when we drop below the lower band and the price actually stayed there for 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 weeks. So what we can do, we can make a reversal move of this one, and if the Bollinger Band will be something like this, and at the lower part it will do something like this, and the price may actually have 2 or 3 weeks above the upper part, reaching at least $6,000 or a little bit higher, basically reflecting the same behavior as it had during the previous drop. And then we may have a correction and return to the baseline, which will be somewhere around here, and maybe something like 5,000 or 4,500, which would be quite of a correction, but we actually would need to have that after this huge rise. And eventually, yeah, that could very well be the cup and handle which we discussed before. Of course, it's rather optimistic scenario, but I think it has a fair chance to happen. Now I was going to mention just a few things about Binance Coin, and if you look at the weekly time frame, you see that basically all the weeks are green, and we actually have the price bounce of the new support line, the sharpest one. And if you remember, we were talking about the 4 hours chart and the way how the price correlates with stochastic oscillator over here. So you remember that at this point we had a very low point of the stochastic oscillator and the price was over here. So instead of going up, because Bitcoin was in a very dangerous situation and actually went down for a while, so we had the correction to even lower to the previous support line, but at that point bears couldn't push it lower, so the price returned. And yeah, if we would buy here as the stochastic oscillator suggested, so maybe something like $18, then sell over here as we mentioned, somewhere at $20. Right now, although it looks very nice, sell, but I think that during the whole period of time when we have this trend, every time when the correlation with stochastic oscillator played out, the new high was higher than the low for something like 10-15%, and at the same time the price at the previous high was much lower. So this high was much lower than this one, and this one was higher, and you see constantly higher highs. This time we didn't make a higher high yet, so it's a bit risky, but I still would consider to see something like maybe $22, $22. And then when we'll form this higher high, then and looking at the stochastic oscillator again on 4 hours chart, we may make a decision on whether we want to sell or not. And I think it would be more reasonable trade, although a little bit more greedy. Okay guys, let's see how everything will play out in this story, and I hope it was useful. Thank you for watching.